definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Let's get a grip on this topic with Joe next.
But first, a lot of companies are very frustrated with their website. It looks old, it's out of date, and it's not getting any customers. Well, Sage Tree gets it. Since 2005, Sage Tree has been helping companies with websites that look great, work great, and get leads. Stop being frustrated by your website and get one that you're proud to share. Contact Sage Tree today to get websites that makes the phone ring. Getting started is easy. Call 866-728-9100. That's 866-728-9100. And you can fix your website today.
Are you going to ask?
Nope.
Not going to ask me what's going on? All right. I'll tell you what's happening.
Somebody ask him.
All right.
Action Jackson, ask him what he wrote.
What did he write?
Yeah, say, Joe, what'd you write?
So, what did you write?
All right. So, so wrote a little bit about expecting different results from doing the same stuff over and over again. And, talking about the latest mass murder event, I guess we just had in Texas, the reaction is always the same from certain parties, I guess, is, it's always the screaming and the calling for more gun control stuff. And, if it was just, if the desire was, okay, we have to do it, because that's the argument you always hear, we have to do something. I remember riding, there was a group I used to cycle with a lot, and I remember, we do these 3-4 hour rides. And I remember talking to a guy when we were cycling, and he was kind of, to the left a little bit of me anyway. And, we were talking about guns and things, and his argument was, well, we just have to do something. And then, so the engineer in me comes out, right? So I ask, okay, if there's a problem you're trying to address, and that this something that you're proposing doesn't address the problem, will have no effect, zero, would you still do it? And he says, yes, absolutely. And, at that point, I just kind of drifted away and let him ride on. But, it's you do things, this idea that we do something, and it really doesn't, if you're going to address a problem, well, let's do things that address the problem and see if we could, make things a little bit better. And, when it comes to gun control and stuff, you have to remember that and I try not to be cynical like this, but I think I've been doing this long enough now to understand that the idea isn't to make things better. The stuff with gun control, coming from that one area of the political spectrum, it's not about increasing public safety. It's not about impeding criminals. It's about disarming the public. That's all it's about. And so, it's interesting because when we talk about let's have a discussion, and you hear a lot about bipartisan talks on this stuff. And Michael and I were just talking about this on the first segment. And they make a big deal. Okay, bipartisan discussion. But it's never really a bipartisan discussion on this thing, because this happens every time there's one of these events. And there's this big uproar, and they talk about they want to do a bipartisan discussion and see if we can resolve something or make some progress. But it's never really a discussion. It's always the Democrats demanding more gun control. It's always the Republicans pretty much giving up everything. And the people that lose are the American people, and not just gun owners. We lose a little bit of our rights, a little bit of our freedoms every time we go through this kind of cycle. And so when I was writing about it, I'm thinking, okay, what would it look like, if we really had a discussion, if we really had people that really wanted to address this issue, what might that discussion look like, or what might they talk about? And there's a couple of things that I think Americans should consider, all Americans, no matter your political feelings. But, for instance, when you have dishonest, or willfully ignorant politicians that are doing things, and you listen to what they say, and they're not, it's hard to believe that they just don't know this stuff. I mean, this is stuff that I could find out pretty easily, and I could research pretty easily. And when you hear politicians that have a number of, staff people and access to a lot of stuff, and they're saying these things, and you have to think, are they being dishonest, or they really don't know? Which, I don't know which one of those things is worse. But for instance, there's a Republican rep in New York, a guy named Chris Jacobs, who decided he was going to go along with the Democrats in Congress and vote on this severe gun control thing that they were talking about. And what happened was immediately, like within a day or two of this, all of his sponsors, all of his supporters on the Republican side, they pulled their endorsements, they pulled their support, and Jacobs ended up retiring, basically, pulling out of the race, saying, okay, he's not going to run for re-election again, because the reaction was so strong, from his supporters that felt abandoned by that kind of stuff. And that's how it's done. That's something that Americans can do and think about. When you have, you have to remember, and I always make this mistake too, or I make this mistake a lot, where, I'll refer to these people as our leaders, and we forget sometimes they're not our leaders, they're our representatives. We elect these people, we send them, we put them in the office to represent us. So they're more representatives than leaders. And when they're not representing us, then we should also take action and remove them. So that's what Jacob's constituents did, which is exactly the way to do it. Another thing is talking about the real problem, and we mentioned this a little bit too in the opening segment. Realistically, when we have these school shootings or mass shootings, all this kind of stuff, it's not a gun issue, and any rational person knows it's not a gun issue. It's a mental health issue. And we do a terrible, terrible job in this country with mental health. And that's some place where we really need to be focusing. And as Americans, we really need to demand that. I was looking at one of the guys I read a lot is John Hinderaker from the Powerline blog. And he was writing about this last week. And he was saying that, over the last 60 years, the number of beds that we have available in psychiatric hospitals in this country dropped by 96%. 96% over the last 60 years. And, and there were a number of decisions. President Reagan, I guess, made a bad decision like that with, how that really influenced how we deal with mental health. But, I mean, that's the kind of, a drop of 96%. If we had 100 beds 60 years ago, that means we'd have 4 beds today.
Jeez.
That's what a drop of 96% is. So, if we're going to talk about this stuff rationally, that's what we need to be talking about. If we were going to have a bipartisan discussion about this, especially with the incidents that happen at schools, then, one of the first things we should be talking about is getting rid of these ridiculous gun-free zones. These gun-free zones, are a bigger part of the problem probably than anything else. And that's the quickest, easiest, cheapest thing we could do that would get us, almost immediate results. Because you have to remember, in our society, unfortunately, the way things are, we sensationalize these things. The media sensationalizes these events. The politicians politicize these events. It makes it seem like we have many more of these events than we actually do. And if you're looking at this, you try to look at this, say, from a school administrator's point of view. Okay, what do we do to make our school safe? Well, people come up with these different ideas. Every place should have a school resource officer present, each school. And, and I wrote about this on an op-ed a couple of years ago on this subject that was in the Union. And, if I look at, like, where I live in Lakeside, there's 6 schools, I think, in the district. There's 2 middle schools and 4 elementary schools. So if you're going to have a school resource officer at each of those schools, that's $150,000 to $250,000 per officer at each school. So what's a school district supposed to do? How are they supposed to fund that? And then do you have one at each of the 6 schools, or do you make the command decision, well, we're only going to cover the middle schools? Well, then what happens if you have an event at one of the elementary schools? How do you explain that?
So I did the calculations. If we increased the federal budget, or spending, I should say, if we increased the federal spending by just over 0.5%, we could put 2 to 3 armed officers at every single K through 12 school in the United States.
I got a better idea.
What?
Teachers union pay for them.
Yeah, even better.
They could do that. So
You
read
don't
my
think-
article. It's very good. You'll
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Awesome job.
GetAgrip.com.
Great job.
Thanks for watching this clip from Gun Owners Radio. You can watch us live every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. California time, right here on our YouTube channel, or if you're in the San Diego area, you can listen to us on 1170 a.m. We're also available on your favorite podcast platform for free. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can help restore and protect the Second Amendment, not just in California, but across the country.